You know, when you look at a piece of Indian art, you're not just seeing some beautiful object. You're actually reading a story. Today, we're going to figure out how to decode these stories and really understand what they're telling us about India's history, its power struggles, and its ever-evolving identity.
Okay, let's dive right in with this. This is the Nataraja, the dancing Shiva, an absolute masterpiece from the Chola dynasty. But seriously, it's so much more than a sculpture. It's like a whole universe of ideas, all captured in bronze. I mean, look at how Shiva's balancing on one foot, just crushing the demon of ignorance. And with his other leg, he's kicking away the veil of illusion. In one hand, he's got the fire of destruction, and in the other, a drum that's literally beating out the rhythm of creation. It's this incredible story of cosmic balance, and it really sets the stage for everything we're about to get into.
So, every single piece of art we're going to look at today is part of this huge, ongoing conversation. They're all clues. Clues to what people cared about, who was in charge, and how they saw the world around them. So the big question for us is this: how do we listen? How do we read the stories this art is telling us about India's identity as it changes through time?
To start listening, we've got to go back, way back. Back to a time when art wasn't just something pretty to look at. No, it was a tool of power. It was how early empires literally stamped their authority onto the world.
This story really kicks off thousands and thousands of years ago. In the Bhimbetka caves, we find these amazing scenes of hunting and dancing. It's like a visual diary of what early community life was all about. Then, you fast forward to the 3rd century BCE, and you have the Mauryan Empire using these massive, monumental sculptures to project its power. And from there, as empires rise and fall, the art keeps changing, reflecting the unique vibe of each new kingdom.
And check this out. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This is the Sarnath Lion Capital from the Mauryan period, and it is so much more than just an impressive sculpture. It was basically a piece of political propaganda. You've got the 4 lions, right? They're facing out in all directions, a clear symbol of the empire's massive reach. And that wheel, the chakra, it represents the Dhamma chakra, the cosmic law and order that the empire promised to bring. This was a message, loud and clear, to everyone about who was in charge and what they stood for.
All right, let's jump forward a few centuries. As new empires start to rise, the art begins to tell a totally different story. It's not just about raw power anymore. Now, it's about cultural fusion, about creating a brand new identity from this incredible mix of different traditions.
The Mughal court, especially, became this fantastic melting pot of cultures, and you can see it perfectly in their famous miniature paintings. These artworks were amazing. They brought together the super delicate, intricate detail from Persian art, the bold colors and storytelling of local Indian traditions, and even, get this, the use of perspective that was just starting to arrive from Europe.
So here's the crucial point. This fusion wasn't some kind of accident. It was a deliberate choice. This blended art became the visual language of a new, sophisticated imperial identity. It was a way of showing that the Mughal court was powerful, sure, but also cosmopolitan and uniquely Indian, all at the very same time.
But this whole story of fusion and cultural exchange was about to take a really dramatic turn. With the arrival of the British, Indian artists suddenly faced this new, urgent question. How do you create art that's truly yours when a foreign power is trying to tell you what your culture should be? And this is where you can really see the clash, right? It was like an artistic battlefield. On one side, you had British academic art. It pushed this Western-style realism and often painted subjects that, well, just reinforced the colonial power structure. But in response, this powerful artistic rebellion kicks off. The Bengal School of art. They consciously rejected those Western styles and instead looked inward for inspiration, to folk art, to the ancient Ajanta murals, and to those Mughal miniatures we just talked about.
And you've got to understand, this was way more than just a debate about what looks good. This was a deeply political act. The Bengal School, led by people like Abanindranath Tagore, was a huge part of the nationalist or Swadeshi movement. Creating a modern yet authentically Indian art was a way of taking back their cultural identity, of resisting foreign control. It was, simply put, art as resistance. Now, as India barrels towards independence, its artists face a totally new kind of challenge. How do you possibly capture both the insane excitement of a new nation and the deep, deep trauma of its birth?
Just look at this number, 80 lakh. That's 8 million people. That's the estimated human cost of the 1947 partition. The trauma of this mass displacement and violence, it just cast this long, dark shadow over the joy of independence, and it forced Indian artists to turn their focus to a new subject, the ordinary people who were caught right in the middle of history. And this marks a really profound shift in the story of Indian art. The focus just completely turns away from the divine, the royal, and the imperial. In a new, democratic India, the hero of the story, the subject of the art, well, it became the common person. Their struggles, their work, and their incredible resilience.
And this sculpture, Santhal Family by Ramkinkar Baj, is just a perfect illustration of this new vision. He made it in 1937, so even before independence, and it doesn't show us a god or a king. It shows us a tribal family, on the move, their bodies lean and strong. By putting these ordinary people up on a pedestal, Baj was sending a crystal-clear message. The true strength of the new India isn't in its rulers, it's in its people.
So, as we've seen, the story of Indian art isn't over. It's not a closed book. It's a living, breathing conversation that's still going on, with new artists adding their own voices to it all the time.
We can really trace this whole journey, right? It all started as a language of power, used by ancient empires to say, we're in charge. Then it evolved into this beautiful mirror of cultural fusion under imperial rule. And finally, in the modern era, it became this absolutely essential tool for forging a national identity in a post-colonial world.
And that brings us to one last thought. That conversation we've been tracing through all these centuries, it's still happening, right now. The art being made today is writing the story of our time, and it's a story that future generations are going to look at to try and understand who we were, what we cared about, and what we were struggling with. So the real question is, what story are we telling them?